Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Oakwalker, and we're here with Earth Medicine for the Soul, our podcast on just generally old traditional methods of being more in touch with Creator and Spirit. We're happy to have you. We've been talking lately about um, shadow work. So I'd like to introduce you to my cohort, Mr. Stronghorse. Hello there.
Hey, Oakwalker, good to see you again, man. Yeah, we'll fire it up and see what comes out, I guess.
Okay, well, so where we left off last time, we were talking about um, the problem with the closed heart problem, which is the way you've encapsulated so many of the things that are sort of lacking in our culture and the way we're approaching the world today. And we got started off on our different traditions and how we handle what I was calling shadow work. Shadow work is
Right,
that ability to basically admit that you're not perfect.
right,
It's
right,
like, yeah, it's like that part of you that's ability with the ability to say, gosh, there's things in me that could use some improvement. And it harkens back to the idea of repentance in Christianity. It harkens back
right,
to the idea of even in the Arthurian legends, where, and the, what's the word, alchemical um, legends, where they're trying to turn lead into gold. And so, in order
right,
to use this analogy of turning lead into gold, it's as if you can say that there's a part of me that's still leaden, that it isn't a perfect example of that which the Creator wanted me to be, if you will. And so
right.
I have to do some work in myself to attempt to turn those leaden parts of me back into gold. And we do that a lot in my shamanic traditions as well, too. Um, it can come in all manner of different ways. Normally, just about, I would say, every time I'm sitting with my mesa, going around the different elements, because on my mesa, I've got your south in the earth, my water in the west, my air in the north, and my fire in the east. And then that all comes together in that magical medicine wheel cross into the middle, which is where
Right.
the upper and the lower and the interior directions all kind of come together. Uh, I want to get into that interior thing. One of the things that a lot of the indigenous traditions talk about is that there are seven directions. Okay, we have, you going forward, there's what's behind you, there's what's to my left, there's what's to my right. There is an upper when I look up, there's a lower when I look down, and that's the six. That's our three-dimensional reality, if you will, like looking at a die or one of a pair of dice. And then there's the seventh direction. And in the seventh direction, that is within. And it is the within direction that comprises just about all of the all of the entire universe. The universe is within you. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. It's all right there in the here and now. Because that, if my memory is nothing more than a memory, that's the past, and my future is nothing more than a dream because it hasn't occurred yet. The only thing that's ever really happening is now. It's the here and now, right here, right now. That's where reality is. And that is an internal condition of no longer being obsessed with the past or the future and being able to accept right now, here and now, what is going on. And from that perspective, that ability to more or less oversee ourselves, from that perspective, we can undertake the shadow work, which is the admission that we are not necessarily perfect. It is the opposite of narcissism. It's the antithesis of egocentricity. So in my
Oh,
traditions, we had a lot of different ways of going about doing that shadow work. And a lot of it was just about shamanic journeying. So when we do that part of shamanism that's called animism, we will go and we will access the consciousness of different animal archetypes, like the hawk or in my case, I have a giraffe down in there. I have mouse, and accessing these animistic archetypes allows us to take shamanic journeys through our own imaginations, if you will, and utilize the strengths and the weaknesses of these animal archetypes or symbology to help ourselves see ourselves better, and also to build our core strengths out of the symbolism that those animals provide for us. That's basically what animism does. And once we start this process of journeying, which is a process of meditation, and in that meditation, the first thing you do is you get into the here and now, you go within. Meditation is a practice of going inside. And so from within there, we can ride what you might call the dreamland into different realms of our spirit and soul, mostly the soul, and take a look, take an objective and accountable look at what it is that's going on in there. What does my soul witness? What do I think? What do I see? What do I feel when I'm in this interior realm? And all of that constitutes shadow work. We've done it with medicine journeys, with plants and different kinds of medicines like that. Psychedelic medicines are available for this. And there's soul retrieval, which is a practice of going out into the inner world and literally grabbing pieces of your soul that have been disconnected from you or disjointed from you and bringing them back into your heart and into your current experience so that you can reintegrate yourself in a bigger, more holistic way. Uh,
so let me ask you questions. So, I mean, would you consider, have you ever done ayahuasca?
no, but I've done DMT, which is the same essential chemical element, and it's
I just
just
wondered, so
amazing.
do you think like an ayahuasca or one of those plant journeys is a really in-depth work into to dissolving or discovering and dissolving the shadow?
Yes, mostly what the plant medicines do, and I'm kind of an expert in some plant medicine that you picked. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, my microphone just fell over.
I can hear you.
Other microphone. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm sort of an expert in use of psilocybin in ceremonial
Hmm.
journeys, and also San Pedro, which is the source of mescaline, um, for those kind of medicine journeys. In my Peruvian traditions, those ceremonies are called masadas. And in the masadas, you'll spend the whole night with a very well trained shamanic guide who can guide you through, and who can guide you through the healing that you need at that particular time in your life, at that juncture. Um,
Hmm.
eh, what the psychedelic medicines do is they cut through your ego in a most spectacular way. They get you out of your egocentric monkey mind existence and put you off into a place where it seems as if the forces of creation have a more direct line into your consciousness, and you get to be there and remember it uh, and set yourself aside, if you will, or the delusional part of you goes away. And I think that those
Let's talk
kind of
about that for a second because, like you said something earlier that I really want to focus in on because you said so that you can objectively, review yourself, and
yeah,
therein I think lies the crux of the problem because you know it's real easy. I mean, everybody sees you differently than the way you see yourself,
yes,
and so to get out of that subjective self judgment or self comparisons or all the various things that keep us locked down in the shadow.
right, the self
Um,
identity.
yeah, self identity. So is it's a tricky proposition to be able to find the discipline, find the intuitive will to want to be able to get in that objective observing position.
Hmm.
I guess you're covering some of that in terms of people who go into try different plant medicines and such. I never, I mean, I've done ayahuasca and peyote ceremonies, psilocybin. I never really liked any of it, quite honestly.
Hmm.
I preferred to, I mean, the best work I did really was out in the desert in a medicine wheel with alchemy and just me and the universe and as I am,
Hmm.
and but for me to get from that point of who I thought I was to going out and sitting in the desert and doing these ceremonies, that was a leap, and
Yeah,
for me, I think the only reason I did that was because I have a love of adventure and and a love of going into the unknown. I don't know
yeah.
where that comes from, but there's always been a real attraction of let's do something crazy. Right? I'm all in. Let's go. You know, but for most people, I think that they don't. I mean, it sounds good to be able to talk about objectively viewing yourself and studying your shadow, but it's a hard proposition to take on. I mean, where are you at with that?
Oof. I got a couple of ways to go with that statement. I do notice that a lot of people don't want to admit that they need to do work on themselves. If you tell a
Right,
person that he needs to sit down and do some shadow work, normally, unless a person is already deeply involved in a process of knowing thyself, because it all goes back to know thyself, right? And so, unless a person's already come to the conclusion that the shadow work is necessary, most of them aren't going to be cajoled into it, or you're not going to be able to sit down with them and say, well, the fact is that you need to work on yourself. And most of the
right,
responses I get from 99% of the people would be, what? No, I don't. You know, fuck you.
right,
I don't have to do
right,
that. Um,
right.
so there's a process, and for me, I mean, it was the dark night of the soul is what basically got me there. And I was,
Yeah,
sitting on a curb saying, listen, universe, I'm not moving. I'll sit here and starve to death unless you come up with some answers for me. Because everything we've done for the last 40 years, that shit didn't work. And so it
right,
was really it was a very dark space for me. I was like, I'm out. I'm done. Show me what you got. And that took him 45 minutes before I got up and went, oh, I've been doing it all
really.
backwards. Oh, you give
But you got to the
first.
end of the road, basically, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you were like, "This is it, man. All right, I'm done. I mean, this is
Yep.
it.
I'm
Like,
out.
something's got to open up, or I'm done. I mean, is
Uh-huh.
that,
And so it was that point of surrender. And
yeah,
that's a theme that I see in a lot of people. My mentor Oscar used to always say, everybody in this room, and he'd have 30, 40 people in circle. Everybody in this room has believed that they were crazy at some time or another. And that's that dark night of the soul. That's that point that led us all to a basic surrender. You, I think I'm going to say it in terms I don't like. You have to surrender in order to come to that point where you're willing to listen, right? So the willingness to listen
Right.
could be also referred to as your surrender, because everything your ego's been doing right up until that time, it isn't getting you where you need to go. It's not working. And you're
Right.
and the
Right.
ego is not your heart. Your heart is not your ego. Your head is not your ego. Your ego is just a collection of events that have happened and the choices you made regarding them. And it's your identity. It has nothing to do with the soul of your heart and the intellect of your head. Those two things don't comprise your ego. Your ego is the person who's proud of your intellect and who thinks that you're the most compassionate individual on the planet.
Right. Right. Well, I think also the ego is sort of a byproduct of survival adaptability.
I agree with that
Uh,
totally.
people are like, well, they just, this stuff isn't going to just fall in my lap, and so I think one of the big discoveries that we find when we get deep into a spiritual path and working with the shadow is that the more you start opening up those channels of receptivity that have been
Mm-hmm.
blocked by the
Mm-hmm.
shadow, or these pains that you've carried forward because you had nowhere to go with them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then as you start receiving more, then opportunities start presenting themselves more on a conscious level. They
Yeah.
may have presented themselves previously, but because you're shut down by the shadow, you're not getting it. They just go
Yeah.
past you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people they think, well, I got to, this is all well and fine, but that's not going to feed my family. It's
Yeah.
not going to take care of the food on the table. So the it's a difficult, it's a, it's not something you could sell. You know what I mean? There's no
Yeah.
sales job involved in this.
It's
It's
like
like you
saying,
said,
hey,
you can't
I've got
said,
this
hey, I'm
great
gonna do you a
client.
favor, man. You need some help.
Uh,
Oh, really? Well, and
yeah.
and and you don't,
I've got this thing that's going to
so
make you miserable, and it's going to be the best thing that ever happened.
that's right. That's right. Take the pill. Take the
Right.
blue one or the red one.
Yeah. I was thinking about this too. Just today is that once the shadow work begins, once you've started down that path, and there's a color that the indigenous, it's at the red road when you start down the path of spiritual awareness, or is it
Right,
the
right.
yellow road? It's one of the roads.
Red road.
Red road. I thought so. And once you start down the red road, then there's no turning around and going back. And you can be
No.
doing your shadow work while you're doing the dishes now. You can be doing the
Yeah.
shadow work while you're sitting on the can. It just
Right.
you're doing it. It's a
You're on the train, and the
self-awareness,
train don't stop.
right? Yeah. And your self-awareness is always building then. And I mean the big self, not the little self. The self-awareness that puts you right there in the spotlight with creator. That's where the shadow work is always happening. And in fact, that's what the shadow work does. What the shadow work does is it brings it all into the light. And that's very
Right.
critical, is
Right.
because now when you start doing your shadow work, you're the light. The light comes from you. It's your
Right.
inner flame, right? That you're in your
Right.
own shadow and you're now illuminating all this stuff that you've collected over the course of your life, or maybe many lives. And
Right.
and all of a sudden you get to look at it and go, well, that's not going to work, and that's no, I didn't, that I saw that one and you bit me in the ass, you
Right.
know, stuff
Yeah.
like
No,
that.
and let me share with you a really intense story that kind of illustrates all this. Um, and let me preface this before I start. I'm not ragging on therapy Okay, but I am going to brag on medicine. So that's what this story's about. And so I got asked to run a sweat lodge for the Austin men's group, and
Hmm.
uh, they did a lot of what's it Campbell what's Campbell what's his name, the guy that used to
Joseph Campbell.
yeah, the hero's journey and all that. And
Yeah.
so they found out about me and they contacted me and they asked me to run a sweat for them. I said, fine, and so I went out, I can't remember where it was, and built a sweat lodge. And it turned out this weekend was about the absent father. It was about the father that was there, but he never really was. He never really
Hmm.
engaged with you as a child. And so it was a therapy session to try to help and heal that part of yourself. And so and so so I started the sweat lodge, and in our sweat lodge, you pour first for yourself, and then you pour for others, and then you do what's called a giveaway, and then you give gratitude to the creator. And so there's 4 rounds, okay?
Hmm.
And so we started, going around, and people were kind of telling their stories, and it got about halfway, and this is all men, okay? And I probably had 40 men in this thing,
That's big.
pretty big sweat lodge, and then this one kid or whatever was like pouring was telling a story, and he said, can I ask for forgiveness for being sexually abused? And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. And he just lost it. And he started crying and, please forgive me, and I forgive my father. And I'm pouring water on the rocks, like, damn. And it ignited the whole lodge. And I
Hmm.
bet you over half of those men in there had been abused sexually, which
Uh-huh.
caught me completely off guard. I had no clue.
Uh-huh.
But I'm pouring water, and they're crying and they're carrying on. And it was a hugely healing ceremony, hugely healing. Everybody in there just, and so after the sweat's over, this is the funny part. And I'm standing outside, and people are coming out. The men are coming out of the swells, and they're hugging me, and they're saying, "Oh my God, that was incredible. That's what I came here to." I said, "I never felt so good," and all this. Well, standing back behind a little bit were the therapists that were putting on this weekend, and their eyes were about this big around, and they come up to me and go, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're healing. It's a healing sweat." They go, "No, no." I go, "No, no, no." No, no, we don't. Look, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. But well, you can leave now. And I'm like, what? They, they saw their paychecks going out the window, you know? And all these guys are like, and it freaked me out. I thought, oh my God, why are these guys like getting get down on me for doing a healing sweat? But they
Uh-huh.
never seen medicine work. And so they
Yeah.
they were just and all these guys are just
Flabbergasted.
like all crying, and they got all this stuff out of them, and they've been
Uh-huh.
carrying this pain, and it was just like bam. And it was nothing I had to do with it. I didn't see it coming. But when it opened itself up, I started, okay, well, let's pour some water and get this thing
Yeah.
going. So I think from a shamanic, that's a difference, I think, in a therapeutic approach and a shamanic approach.
Yeah.
In shamanism, we apply alchemy
Hmm.
to assist the individual in processing.
Yeah.
Whereas in therapy, they said, well, you tell your story. Okay, now tell it again. Well, talk some more. Okay, well, our time's up. You got to come back. And it's
Uh-huh.
and it's opening up, but it takes forever. And the thing I'm leading up to is I was so put off by these therapists that I challenged one of these guys one time. I showed up at his office and I said, I need to talk to you. And I sat there for an hour and a half talking to this guy, trying to convince him that he was coming from his head, not his heart. Because I
Uh-huh.
could see the energy movement, from a shamanic standpoint, I could see it. And he was just arguing, no, you're wrong. No, I'm not. And they, listen, for an hour and a half, finally, I just went, all right, forget
Yeah.
it, man. I mean, it was really interesting to see that these people who professionally treat other people can't find that space within themselves.
Yeah.
And
And
I
they're
think
supposed to have done
that,
that before they even enter that profession,
yeah,
you
you'd
know?
think so, but I think I mean, we're bragging here on a shamanic path. We're bragging here on a spiritual path. You
Hmm.
know, I think the thing that you and I have is Mother Earth.
Yeah.
We've had that connection to where we have that embrace, where the intimacy, where we have that unconditional love, and nobody else is interfering with that. There's
Hmm.
nobody there to question you or challenge you or get in your space. It's just you and that experience. And those experiences for me were the most meaningful. And I think that's where I clicked over into, okay, I still don't know what this is, but I'm all in.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
objectively, I'm gonna ride this train as far as I can go, man. And I
Yeah.
don't know where it's gonna go or what it's gonna do, but I'm in.
Hmm. Yeah, me too. Um, while you were talking that, I think that we are going to need to close in a minute. And there's one thing that I kind of want to throw in right at the end here, and it's very important, and it is that all healing is self-healing.
Right,
That's a very important thing to realize that even when you're in a sweat lodge with a guy who's pouring water, for example, he is not the one healing you. All he's doing is facilitating an environment for you to heal yourself. And
right,
that's really important. As a healer, I've been through healing after healing after healing, and it's all about getting myself out of the picture.
right,
I can't
right,
take credit for any of it.
right.
And
No, I think that's not I'm very much against anybody who tries to take credit for that stuff. I,
yeah,
I really gets my ire up, because it's I mean, we've already seen what happens that guy that I think was running that Sweat in Sedona
oh
killed some
yeah,
people, you
yeah. He
know.
had no idea what he was doing. He just thought, I can
No,
pour water on hot rocks, and
not a
two people
clue,
died.
not a clue what he was doing, and charging him 10 grand for a weekend and thinking how great he is.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, don't want to get me started on that. No, it's not about us
yeah.
on any level. And I think that's really that's set up. You switch out of that subjective viewpoint to that objective viewpoint, which allows you to really start seeing and moving and processing stuff. So let's carry this on into the next time we get together. Does that sound good?
That sounds excellent because I've already got the time warning. And
Okay.
that's
Well,
interesting
good. I
because
think
after that little symbol comes up, then it's not elapsed time anymore. It's remaining time now. So it's counting that down. So we should sign off. I've really enjoyed this session. This has been one of my favorites so far. And
super.
yep, and I am going to say thank you, everybody who does listen to these. And I really appreciate your presence and your time. And I'm going to say we'll see you next time. My name is Oakwalker, and I'm signing off.
And I'm Stronghorse, and thanks for coming and tell your friends.
Yeah, that too. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Stop. Okay.